Now is synthesizers. So the second part is going to be talking about synth modulation. Synth modulation. Modulation means you're going to affect something and change something over time. Synth modulation, there's two main things that modulate, the envelope and the LFO. It's important to understand that the envelope and the LFO do not touch the sound. They modulate parameters associated with the oscillator, amp, or filter to change the sound. They don't actually affect the sound themselves. So you can have a fully analog synthesizer that has digital modulation sources like a digital LFO or a digital envelope, and it's still an analog synthesizer, because when they talk about what makes a synthesizer analog, it goes from the oscillator, they're talking about the sound chain, the oscillator into the filter, into the amplifier, and out. But the LFO and the envelope can be digital and still have an analog synthesizer. And of course, in the computer world, everything is digital anyway, so whatever. But that's what we've got there. So let's go ahead. Where'd my... Oh. So over here, this is how this works. You've got the oscillator, the filter, and the amp. And then the LFO and the envelope will affect these here like this. They'll affect this stuff. So that's what's going on there. And they'll affect different parameters inside of it. And so let's take a look at what these do. So let's start with the envelope. This is most synthesizers have an ADSR envelope. The attack, decay, sustain, and release. The way these work is the attack and the decay are both time, and the release is also time. And the sustain is level. Okay? So how this works is that when I press a key on a keyboard, it sends the note on message. Remember, we talked about this before when we were talking about MIDI and stuff like that, note on and note off messages. So when I when I press a key, it sends a note on message. When I release the key, it sends a note off message. The time in between is called the sustain. So think of it like this. I have a sound, but it's not playing. We're not hearing it. So that is complete silence. That is 0% loudness. My main level is right here. That's 100% loudness. So when I press the key, what happens is it goes up to what we call the attack level, which is 100%. The attack level, that is a time here. This attack part here, it's going to go up to 100%. How long it takes to get to that 100% is the attack time. Okay, so the attack time is how long it takes to go from 0 silence to 100% of loudness, which is the full loudness. As I'm holding the key, that is going to be a sustain level. Now, you could have a time it takes to go from the attack, like the 100%, to the decay, to the sustain. That is called the decay. When I let go of the sound, when I let go of the key, and the sound wants to go back to 0, that's our release time. The time from when I let go to how long it takes to go all the way to 0%, that is called my release. Okay, so attack, decay, sustain, and release. Attack and decay are time, sustain is level, release is time again. So let's just take a look at this. Let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to put this into my triangle wave. So here we are. Okay, so we have this. Now let's say, right now we've been hearing it a certain way. I'm going to go ahead and pull everything down. Hear that? We're going to start with, let's start with the release. The release is probably the easiest thing to hear. When I play the key, you hear it start. When I release it, you hear it stop. If I push this up like this, now listen to it. When I release the key, it takes a while for it to go back to 0. Here, let me show you that. Here's my keyboard. See how long it takes to go back to 0? Let me put this release all the way down here. See? it goes back really quickly. Okay, let's pull it up again. Hear how it takes a while to die off? That's my release time. Now, let me go ahead and put this all the way back down again. I'm going to keep the sustain up here at 100%. Let's pull our attack up. So far we've been hearing it just start. You can even hear like a little pop, like a little click, because it's like getting that waveform suddenly. So let's pull this attack up and watch what happens. Before I do this, try to think about in your head what it's about to sound like. Okay? So think about for a second what it's about to sound like. Right? And now, let me play it for you. Hear how it fades in? If I pull this up, it's going to fade in even more. Right? It doesn't start right on the beginning. It fades into it. Right? Now, if I pull my attack and my release up, watch what happens, or listen to what happens. See how it takes a while for it to fade up, and it reaches that sustained level, and then it takes a while to fade down again. It takes a while to get to that 100%. We're at 100% right now. I let go, and it takes a while to fade out. That is the attack and the release. These are both times. Now let's check out the sustain level here. So I've got my level. If I hold a key down, you can hear I can adjust the level. I'm holding the key down here so it's sustaining. I can adjust the level based on this fader right here. Okay. Right? And that's just the level of the sound. But check this out. If I pull the sustain down and I pull the decay up, what's happening is that it's starting off and it's just hitting that. But let's here, watch. Hear how it starts louder and gets softer? Hear how it's getting softer a little bit, but it's not dying out, it's just getting softer. Let's hear. I'm going to pull the sustain down even more so you can really hear it. Here we go. It starts loud and it gets softer. And that's the decay. I'm still holding it so it's going to sustain. But that level from the 100%, it starts really loud quickly because I have a fast attack set up. And it comes down to the sustain level. Now let's mess around with all these here. Let's go ahead and put this one up. Let's put this one up. Let's leave that sustain down. Okay, so what you hear is a slope goes up, comes down, and then levels off in loudness. And then when I let go, it comes down again. Okay, the reason why is because think of it like this, as in there's like 100% marker right here in the middle. The sound is going to reach that 100%, and then it's going to come down from there for the sustain. Okay, so that the attack level is always 100%. It's always whatever this level here is, that's what it is. That's 100%. So it's going to go up, it's going to come down, and it's going to level off whatever my sustain level is, and it's going to die off when I release. Okay, let's just see that one more time. Listen to it, see it. Okay, and I let go. Right? So that's how that works. Now, let me just point out a couple things with this that it took me a while to wrap my head around because I didn't really, I didn't have somebody to kind of point these things out to me. And it just took me a long time to kind of really understand how this works until finally somebody did sit down and kind of explain it all to me. Because I didn't have videos to watch. All I had was articles to read. I didn't have friends who were doing any of this stuff. So it took me forever to really wrap my head around this, what was actually happening. But here's what the deal is that if I put my sustain level all the way up like this decay is not going to have any effect because my sustain, because remember, the attack is going up to 100%. So if I put my sustain at 100%, there's not going to be any shift in level. So the attack is not going to do anything. The decay is not going to do anything. We're just gonna, it doesn't matter if it's up all the way or down all the way or whatever. If my sustain is all the way up at 100%, this doesn't matter. Only the attack and the release are gonna matter. Okay. If my sustain is anything other than 100%, now the decay starts to matter. Okay. So for example, check this out. I don't need to show you the keyboard anymore. You can figure out what's going on. So I put this up. Listen to the sound. Right? Okay, just goes up. If I put my decay down here, it doesn't change anything. If I put my decay up here, doesn't change anything. If I put my attack down, it just starts right up. Again, the decay doesn't change anything. If I adjust my release, it starts to matter again. I don't usually want my attack all the way down because it can create pops and clicks. Same thing with the release. I usually want to smooth out that kind of like popping sound there. Different envelopes are different. Just like with anything, different envelopes are different. If I pull this up, it doesn't change anything because my sustain is all the way up. Now, if I adjust my sustain down like this, it gets a pop. Gets a little pop on the beginning, which is actually good for bass sounds. Okay. Right? And that's how we can start to create interesting sounds. This is like the first step to actually creating interesting sounds. And this is coming from it's coming from the envelope, the envelope of the sound. Remember, I said there's two things for how we identify sounds: the envelope and the timbre. Okay, the filter is the timbre, the envelope is our shape of the sound. So if I want this, let's get a brighter sound. And I'm going to put my filter down here. Now, watch what happens now. So I got the sound. Let's use this envelope 2 to control the shape of the filter. So this is going to control our shape of our timbre. Okay, so we're using two envelopes. One envelope is our output, the overall level of the sound. The second envelope right here, it's connected here to ADSR 2. So this is going to control what our filter is doing. It's going to raise this up by this amount right here at mod 1. Okay, so the more I turn this one up, the more it's going to make the filter push up like this. Watch. Can push it up or down. Right in the middle is 0. It's not affecting it at all. Now, what if I want the sound to have like a little spike on the beginning and I want to fall off pretty quickly? So what I can do is I can set this up like this. My sustain all the way down, so when I hold the key down, it does not sustain the filter amount. My attack and my release are set a little bit up. And I push my modulation here. Check this out. Hear how it puts like a spike on the beginning? Okay, so this is really cool when you start to hear it over time. So let me go ahead and just put this in here. Let me turn my levels down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put this into I'm going to actually play some stuff with this. Cool. Okay. 3, 4. Okay, let's grab this one here. The second one was better. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. Cool. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so we have the sound here, and I can make this modulate and change over time by adjusting these. These levels here are affecting this one here, or I can pull this down. I can change everything in here once I have a couple things set up. Hear how that's changing the sound over time? I'm adjusting my envelopes here and my filter. And this is how much it does sound really cool. Yeah, like just with a few things, you can actually get things sounding really cool. I'm adjusting my mod 1. So what this is doing here, this is connected to ADSR2. What it's doing is it's telling how much this envelope is going to change this filter cutoff right here. Okay, so the filter cutoff, how much that's going to change is adjusted by this mod 1 amount right here. And this is changing the shape. So, and you can really get in there and mess around with stuff. And it does sound really cool with just a few little changes here. So that's what our ADSR, our envelopes can do for us. Really cool stuff. And you can see here, it's set to gate right now. The gate, what that means is that every time I press the key on my keyboard, it's going to go through this envelope when I release it. It's like the basic stuff. This other stuff in here, loop, LFO 1 and 2, we're not going to talk about that because that's more advanced stuff. I want you to understand about the gate first, which is our keyboard, pushing the keyboard key down and releasing it. It's going to change our gate. Now, let's go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to double click it. It goes back to 0. So now that envelope is not doing anything to our sound anymore. It's just a filter, which is fine. It sounds okay, but it starts to sound way more interesting once I push this mod 1. And that's the relationship there. I mean, for a long time, before I really understood how this stuff all connected together, I would just turn knobs and I'd be like, okay, cool, that sounds cool, but I don't really understand what I'm doing to this. I didn't really understand the connection to them. What really helped me was when I bought the Nord modular. I bought the Nord modular in the year 2000, and using the Nord modular really helped me to understand how all this stuff connects together, because I bought the Nord modular, and the Nord modular, what it does, it's like a modular synthesizer in like a digital body, and you actually connect things together to make things work. And making the connections, actually connecting things together, really helped me a lot to understand how all this stuff works. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Tomorrow we're actually going to be making connections. We're going to use reactor blocks to do hey Swift, how's it going? Eric, how you doing? We're going to use reactor blocks to make a modular synthesizer to connect all this stuff up together to really see how it all works together. And that's going to be it's a really cool thing. It's really fun to see all that in action. Okay, so that's what's working there. But without seeing it, it's a little bit hard to really, you can see it. I'm trying to explain it, but you're going to see a lot more when we talk about this in terms of like modular synthesizers and like reactor. And you actually see those connections being made. It's actually really cool. It's really fun. That really helped me a lot. Okay, so that's our envelopes here. Let's talk about the LFOs. And the LFOs, essentially, an LFO, what it stands for is low frequency oscillator. It's just a really, really slow oscillator. If you think about how these things work, about how like waveforms work, remember a waveform with the oscillator is creating a waveform and it's moving the waveform a certain amount of times per second, which is frequency. The frequency, if I have a lower frequency or a higher frequency, that determines the pitch. Okay, you learned all this stuff in Mod 1. That determines our pitch. So what they realized is that, remember, it's actually still a waveform. It's still something that's it's actually a physical thing. We just can't see it. We can feel it. We can feel things vibrating. We can see it if it's if it's vibrating something else. We can see it, but it does have physical properties. We just don't see them with our eyes. It's in the wrong spectrum for us. So with an oscillator, if we go slower and slower and slower, it gets out of our range to physically hear it. We can no longer hear it anymore. It goes out of our range. We can't hear it. If it goes too fast, it goes out of our range. If it goes too slow, it goes out of our range. But it's still there. So this is what a low frequency oscillator does. A low frequency oscillator is oscillating so slow that we cannot hear it, but we can use that energy to control other stuff. It's super cool. It's a bit weird. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. This sounds like magic. Well, it kind of is magic. I mean, before we really understood this stuff, like in how our bodies worked and everything, how to control this, it was magic. If you go back a couple hundred years, it's magic, right? Now we understand this. We've had the whole, like from the 1800s on up, of like really just like crushing down on physics and everything like that, and really understanding the physics of how the world works. So now we can explain this stuff. But before physics became a thing, it was really, really magic. Now, they've understood about vibrations and oscillations and stuff like that for, thousands of years, actually. So it's, I don't know if everybody understood it, but definitely people understood this. And there's all sorts of like Greek philosophers and stuff like that who talk about like frequencies and the magic numbers and all these things, like how like our bodies resonate and oscillate, like like perfect pitches and stuff like that. It's been around for a long, long time. But we were able to capture that and harness that power for other stuff until more recently, and that's where LFOs come in. So they usually include the same waveforms as a normal oscillator: sine, triangle, square, and sawtooth. There's a couple things with LFOs. With the controls, you get the frequency, a sync, and a retrigger. Frequency is just how fast the LFO moves, because it's still an oscillator. You can still change the speed of it, and that's the frequency. Sync locks the LFO rate to the song tempo. So if I'm in my DAW and I've got it synced up, it'll work like just in tandem with it. And then retrigger restarts the LFO every time I press a key on my keyboard. It syncs it up. The retrigger locks it in to my gate, my note on message. So that's what's going on here. Let's see this in action. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this all the way up. I'm going to put my envelope all the way up like this. Cool. I don't need to mess with the second envelope because it's not doing anything. With my mod 1 here is set to 0. So this one is not doing anything right now. Only my envelope 1 is doing anything. So on here, what I'll do is go over here. I'm going to set this envelope 1 to control my oscillator pitch. So I'm going to go over here to my oscillator pitch and set this to LFO 1. So I click on LFO 1 here, source. I need a source for this. And now, watch what happens, or listen to what happens. Okay, there's two things that are going on here. Let's just take a look at this. One is my modulation amount. So the more I press this, it's going to go further away from the original tuning of that pitch. Okay, so there we go. Let's get a different tone. Well, that's okay for now. I guess I'll just turn this down so you can. Okay, so if I want to change the rate, how fast it's actually going, it's right over here. I'm gonna set this to seconds here. I'm gonna set it to this really slow one here. If I adjust my rate, okay, so you can hear how it's changing the speed, fast or slow. I can change my shape. Let's change it to a square, high-low. Sounds kind of like an ambulance in France. Or like a police. And you can hear, that's all they are. When you hear those old style ambulances or whatever, or cop cars, that's all they are. It's just an LFO attached to an oscillator. And you're just turning it on and off. So when they flip the switch, it's using an LFO here with a square wave to adjust that pitch. Right, if I change this shape here, it just sounds like an alarm. Right? So that's how that works there. We can also, there's other things in here. I'm not really going to go too deep into them. The only one I really want to talk about, there's two that I want to talk about, is my the sync here. So if I've got my and I can adjust this rate here. Let's set the rate to 1 or to 0. Yeah, 0. And that should be my 16th note here. Let's see. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna just make a clip, which is the note in it. Let's have it be a 2 bars. There we go. So now, if I play this one, check this out. It's just a note, but what I can do is I can set this to adjust the pitch. Let's set it to a saw down. Hear how that's moving in tempo? And if I click on this, like that, okay? So I've got that there. Let's do sync. There we go. We got that there. Let's do an 8th note triplet. 8th note, not quarter note. Come on. There we go. Hear how it's changing that with the, it's how much it's changing it is right here. I go down. right? It sounds like an old video game, right? That's exactly that's what it sounds like here, is an old video game. And we can adjust how much it affects that with this knob right here, the modulation amount. The speed is over here, the rate, and we're syncing it up to different things. You just have to make sure that your rate is set to 0, 0, right in the middle for it to sync properly, because once I start adjusting this, and this is a pretty cool feature that not a lot of synthesizers act like this, but if I move it, oops, hold on, put that to 0. So there it is, 8 notes, but I can adjust this. Which is, I think it's pretty neat stuff. Then, like over here, like I said before, I don't really want to get into these other ones here too much. You've got rate, delay, rate, and the sync, and the waveform and the speed are all the important ones here. If you don't want it to sync into the clock at all, you can set this to like 1 second or whatever, and just move it. So here it's set for 10 seconds. It's really slow. Super, super slow. The other thing with this, though, you can do that's not as annoying as the pitch. I don't usually like using the pitch stuff for this. I mean, I do sometimes, but depending on what I'm doing. But we can also have the filter attached to our LFO. We can have it attached to LFO 1 or LFO 2. So, for example, oh, is this the? Oh, here's our pulse width. Okay, I can use it here. Check this out. I can use this to affect my sound. There we go. Yeah, okay, there we go. Cool, cool. I was wondering where that was. All right, so if I use LFO, here, let's set this for LFO 2. Because so it'll be different. LFO 1 and LFO 2 will be different. LFO 2, now I can adjust my filter to be affected by that. Choose this right here. Okay. Wait, what's going on? Why are we not hearing it? Oh, I'm adjusting the wrong one. Sorry. There we go. I need to be doing LFO. I was adjusting LFO 1. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So there's that. There we go. Now, there we go. So old dubstep, like the original dubstep stuff, the wobble bass kind of came from using the LFO to adjust the filter here. You know, which is, it is whatever. You can do some cool stuff with this still, though. Here, let me put this. Here, check this out. I can actually attach my envelope to my LFO here. Go down here to source. Turn you off. Don't need you doing that. No mod wheel. Let's go up here to source, and let's go to ADSR 2. And watch what happens here. This is really cool. I can get this to set it up so it does, like, it goes fast to slow. Here, check this out. Every time the envelope hits, it's going to speed this up and slow it down. Right, pretty cool stuff. Can change the sound around. Right, change the sound around by adjusting that little thing right there. Okay, so pretty cool stuff that you can do with these LFOs and these envelopes, and they all kind of start to mix together. Now, I don't expect you to really fully understand how all this stuff ties together. Yet it's going to take time. You got to get in there. You got to play with it. You got to watch some videos. You got to explore it and practice with it. And the more you practice with it, the more it'll sink into your brain about how all this stuff works. This is really just the foundation for how all this stuff is working. This is what we're going over now, is the foundation for getting you set up for all this stuff and how it all works. Okay, but that's the basics of all this stuff. Where are we here? Of that. Okay, so now the final piece of this puzzle, which you've seen me do a little bit here, is the routing. How do you connect these modulation sources with their destinations? Well, different synthesizers handle routing in different ways. Sometimes the source will have menus to select the destination. Sometimes they'll have the source will have a menu as well. So for example, in here, this one I have, for each one I have a couple sources here. So this one has two sources in the filter, two sources in the oscillators. You got a couple sources down here in the LFOs. The envelopes don't. Oh, you can actually attach these to your LFOs, which is kind of cool. So here you can see if I wanted to affect my pitch with an LFO, I click on the source and I can affect pitch with an LFO. And there's a whole bunch of things in here which we can do as well. So more than just the LFO, we could use like random, for example, stuff like that. I'm not sure how the random works. Hold on, to stop you. Yeah, it's just random. Oh, every time the key gets hit, it plays a random note. Okay. So if I hit the random, if I turn the random up, it's going to randomize it every time it hits a key. Yeah, you could do some interesting stuff with that random feature, definitely. There's gate, there's velocity, there's key pressure. So like right now, I think it doesn't matter how hard or soft I hit the key. What we can do is we can, let's see here. How would I do it? Miscellaneous noise, oscillator 1, input. To set it up with a envelope 1. I'm actually not sure how I would set this up to do velocity sensitivity, so when it's like hit it harder, it's louder or softer. I'm not even sure this one can do that. Let's see here. Here's a matrix, and this allows you to control different stuff up. So maybe you do the velocity in here. So if I go over here to matrix target 1, let's go over here to this. Let's hit the velocity, click on that. Now, whoops, velocity, set that, oops, hold on a second, let's see. Click on this, set it for over here maybe? Or, oh, here, oh, maybe I can do that. Oh, interesting, that's really cool. I haven't really messed with this too much. Okay, so I gotta set this to control my sustain, and then I could use this, maybe, to adjust that. Okay, cool. So, well, if I go this way, it works better. If I hit it, it's working opposite how I want. Oh, I know why. Okay, so I put this up, I put this over here, I put this down. There we go. Let me put this decay to here. There we go. So if I wanted to, I've never done that before on here. So if I wanted to have it be velocity sensitive, by default, analog model synthesizers are not usually velocity sensitive. So if I hit it hard, it's loud. If I hit it soft, it's also loud. The velocity is not controlling my level of my volume, right? But if I have it set up with this matrix here going to the sustain level here, and then go to my velocity here, now if I hit it soft, it's quiet. And if I hit it hard, it's louder. But I still got that pop because I'm not connecting it to my output. Let's see if I can connect it to the output. Grab this. Can I connect it to the output? I cannot connect it to the output. So, oh, there's actually a feature in here for this already. So I was doing like some kind of weird hack. That's funny. I don't really program this thing that much. I just use it for teaching. So I can go over here to velocity. There we go. And turn that up. And it's not going to have that pop on the beginning because it's actually the whole thing. Cool. I'm going to turn that back off though. I don't really want that. All right. So we can use this matrix here to control all sorts of stuff. So I can basically, I have 4 things in here that I can connect together with different things, with different parts in here. And you've got key pressure, key follow, alternate, random, all sorts of stuff in here that can really make your productions, your sounds come alive, which is really, really cool. Okay. So that's how this stuff works. And every synthesizer is different. So I'm going to show you a couple synthesizers right now. We're going to go through and look at a couple different synthesizers and how they actually work. Let me just grab my hard drive and plug it in, which I forgot to do during the break. Hold on. Let me just do that real quick. I'll be right back. All right. Got my hard drive is here. Got my little hard drive here. There we go. The reason why I'm loading this in, you can hear the oscillator on the siren there. The reason why I loaded that in is because I want to show you some different plugins here real quick. So we're going to stop using this Yuhei Tyrell, and I just want to show you how all this stuff kind of works in different synthesizers. So that's the Tyrell N6. And we can do some really cool stuff with it. Here, let's use a different one now. I'm going to go ahead and keep that one in here so we can just kind of flip through them after I put them in here. Let's use, unfortunately, we cannot use Massive X, the new version of Massive, but let's use the old version of Massive here. The reason why I cannot use Massive X is because I do not have, because I'm using an M1 Mac and it does not work on an M1 Mac. But here's this. So what I can do with this is let's use this one here. Okay. So here's my synth, and over here on the left is where my oscillators live. Over here's my filters, here's my amplifier, and here's all my routing and stuff like that. All my modulation sources are down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to File. I'm going to go to New Sound. There we go. It's a completely new sound. The sound that you start with is not actually a complete default. It's not a complete initialized sound. So here, I've got my 3 oscillators, and if I wanted to, here, let me turn this on. I'm going to put them both to go through filter 1. And I can turn my amplifier up and down on these. I can adjust my pitch. Turn that down like that. All right, so now, if I wanted to go down an octave, so I got that there. I can change my oscillator to different oscillator types. Okay, and I can change the wavetable position here to change how that's going to sound. All right, so I got that there. Now let's go over here to our filter. I'm going to turn off my filter 2. I'm going to just use filter 1 here. And we're going to use a low pass with 4 or 2, and we got a high pass with 4 or 2 here. 4 is a steeper slope than 2. There we go. Turn my resonance all the way down, so we can hear that there. So we can see what's going on there. I can turn my master up here, so as my overall output is louder. We can hear it's distorting things as we get a little bit too loud there. There we go. Cool. Now, I can control. I can adjust different things. Like I can adjust the filter here. Let's make the filter do something with our LFO. So I've got my LFO 5 here. The way I do it is I click on this little arrow key here, and it gets a little 5 next to it, and I just go over here and I click it into the box. Now, if I wanted to affect that sound more, I click and drag it up. We have 2 curves going on here. There we go. I'm going to make it just be this one curve here. I can select different curves. Like this. Different things. And you can do, there's all sorts of different curve shapes and stuff in here. Which is pretty cool. I can also adjust where it sits on my restart. So you see here it's restart. If I start and stop, it's always going to start in the same place on the curve. If I want to start at the top and go down, I can just drag this over like this. It's going to go in with my sync here. I'm going to sync it up. Let's turn on the sync. 16th note. Let's go to 8th notes. Okay, can adjust this. Okay, if I put this one over here, hear how it's affecting it. I can make it affect it even more. Now this may sound kind of familiar to you because massive was what all the bass people used for years and years and years, was massive. That was like, it was like the first one that really allowed this amount of like connectivity and doing different stuff with it. And that's why massive was so famous. Now there are other synthesizers out there, but this is, what does that say? Boy something. I can't read what that says, but thank you. So in here, right, and we can adjust all this stuff here. I can adjust this. Right, so we got that there. Now let's go over to let's go over to some other thing here. Let's use another LFO to control our wavetable position. So what I want to do is, here, I'm going to turn this one down, turn this up. You can hear there's like a little bit in there. What I want to do is kind of make that happen. Hear that right there, right? So I want to go through that. Boy better know. Okay. Okay, here we go like this. And now what I can do is I can use LFO 6, click on this, have this control my wavetable position. And it starts to change the shape there. I'm going to go ahead and just do my curve, the top curve here. We're going to sync it up. I'm going to click and drag this down over 1 bar. Right? And I'm going to have this be a different curve. Let's use this one here. Let's use a fall. Here we go. Let's go up. Right, like that. Cool. And you can hear how it's working there. Let's go ahead and make it even a little bit slower. Can I make it slower? Oh, let's make it 2 bars for. There we go. Cool. There we go, like that. So you can hear how it's changing the sound over time. Now, with a slow sound like this, it works. If I were to put this on my little bass line here, you wouldn't hear it. It would be too slow. So. Right? So you can hear how that works there. Massive has all sorts of crazy things that you can do with it. But what I really want to impress upon you right now is that even though there's a lot that you're looking at right here when you first load it onto the screen, if you go back to your basics, if you go back to the notes here, and you think about it's just an oscillator, a filter, an amplifier, and try to work out how that applies to this one here, then you're gonna be fine. So here's our oscillators over here, 1, 2, and 3. Here's our filters over here and our amplifier here. And then all this stuff here is just envelopes and LFOs. And how they work, it's just a matter of like kind of looking at it and figuring that out. Okay, let's take Massive out of here. And let's use one of my favorites is Pigments. And Pigments is similar to Massive. It's a wavetable synthesizer, but it's actually much more than that. There's a whole bunch going on with Pigments. I'm not super great at programming this thing yet. I actually just pull up presets and I'll make adjustments as I see fit. I just really love the sounds in Pigments, and you can buy extra sounds. This is from Arturia. It's probably my favorite synth that Arturia makes. But in here, we start to get into, Pigments actually gets into other synthesis types. But again, we can kind of try to boil this down to its basics. So here's engine 1 and engine 2. That's just their word for oscillator. You can see engine 2 is off. So it's not going to produce any sound. It's just over here. Everything's being done with engine 1 right here. There's also a utility engine, which I actually don't know what that does. Then we've got our filters. We're just using one filter here. You can see there's a filter routing. We got our amp modulation here. And we can change all this stuff here. We can change things. You can click on things. It's got little pictures for you, stuff like that. So it makes it easy to use. But the engine in here is super cool because our engine, or the oscillator, can actually have a whole bunch of different stuff. We got analog, we got wavetable, samples, and harmonics. And we can copy that over. Down here is where your modulation sources are. And you can click on, you got different envelopes here. You got your keyboard stuff. You've got your envelope here. And we can click on this, and this is like where I start to really lose. I don't really understand this stuff that much, just because I don't use it that much. But you can change these things. We got envelopes, 3 envelopes. We got 3 LFOs here. Then we got different functions and randomization and combination stuff here. And again, that's not real. I don't really understand it that well. Down here we have our modulation, our macros here, macro 1 and 2, and we can adjust this, like what it's doing here. You can see the level there. And then how you connect these is how do you do it? I forget. Drag, knob, contours, creator, edit, and modulation routing. How do we do that? Oh, there we go. So you open it up like this, and then you see this here? It's got like an up and down. Now it applies it to there. And if I double click it, it goes away. I can get rid of it with a little X right here. Okay, that's actually pretty easy. So you can have this affect different stuff. So I can play my sound. Where's my sound? There's my sound. There we go. So you can find some really cool sounds. And you can see how like this does some really interesting stuff here. And you can actually see it working here. This is Pigments version 3? Pigments version 3, yeah, version 3. So it's like they've changed some stuff. Every new version, they kind of tweak it a little bit. So it's, you know, it's hard. It's a little bit hard for me to keep up because I don't use it every single day. But I really love this thing. I love the sounds that you can get out of it. And it's, you know, but again, if you understand what you're looking at, you can kind of go in here and see, okay, this is my oscillators, oscillator 1, oscillator 2. This is my filters here. I can, if I want to adjust that. Right, I can adjust my cutoff. And the sky becomes the limit. You just have to dive in and kind of do it and get some ideas. My main goal for you with these lessons for this week is not necessarily for you to become an expert at programming sounds from scratch. That's a little bit ambitious for 1 week or 3 lessons. But what I would really love is if you pull up a sound. Let's go over here and find a sound. Let's grab a bass sound. Let's go over here to 80s disco bass. So in here, so if I okay, I don't know what's going on there, but here, if I want to adjust my filter, I know what I can do. If I want to make it darker or brighter, I can go over here and adjust that filter. And that's really what I want y'all to be able to get into, is like, oh, okay, I kind of understand what's going on in here, so I can get in there and really try stuff out. Why is that not playing all the notes? I think it's not playing the notes because of overlap. Yeah, here, let me just make these legato. Oh, it's got a sequencer in it, that's why. Okay, let me turn the arpeggio. There we go. Right, and I'm playing, it's playing too high. So you can hear it doesn't really sound like a bass. It's like, wait, that doesn't sound like a bass. That's supposed to sound like a bass, isn't it? Yeah, that's because I've got it up an octave here. Let's put a pitch. There we go. And let's go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and crop this. I'm gonna move these down. Cool. So I'm just gonna make these all short. And I can go in here, I can say, okay, I want it to be a little bit longer than that. So let's go over here to our envelope. That's the VCA envelope, which is this one here. And I can adjust my release. And you can hear how I can adjust that there. Make it a little bit louder so you can actually hear it. Or I can adjust my sustain. So the sustain is being controlled by something here. What is that sustain? I'm not sure what this is being controlled by. Let's see here. We got that. It's being controlled maybe by one of these here. Let's see what this one's doing. FM amount, nothing. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how to see what it's being controlled by either. Oh, function 1, here we go. Yeah, okay, this is saying. So if I want to turn this one off, and I don't know what this function really is doing. I don't understand like what the function is, but I can see, I go through and I see, okay, what is it controlling? Let's go to our envelopes here. And now, wait, it's still being controlled by something. LFO? New. Yeah, this is like where I start to lose, like, I'm not sure what's actually controlling what in here. This is like, I just need to sit down with the manual and check this stuff out, really, which I haven't done. I just kind of got excited and just started using it. But when you get in here, we can say, okay, I can adjust my cutoff. I can adjust my filter here. Right. And you can see there's different filter types in here that have a different sound. Okay, Jupiter 8. Right, some really cool filter types. Now what Arturia have done is they've grabbed all their filters from their different synthesizers. They're kind of, this is kind of like a Uber synth. It's collecting all their different models they've made of their different virtual analog synths that they've made over the years and kind of combining it into one synth. So anyway, I just want to show you, like, you know, how you can kind of navigate around this. Especially, this is a good example because I don't really know how to do this synth very well. So it's a really good example for this. It's like, you know, once you kind of like see it, obviously there's some things in here that I'd have to dive into the manual for, but without even diving into the manual, you can see how things kind of work with stuff. There's so many different synthesizers out there. It would take forever to go through them all. Here, let me pull up it's a little bit easier to see with the audio units here. So for example, some other famous ones are Transfer Records, X-For Records here, the Serum. And those of you who've like followed bass music and synthesizers and stuff, you'll know that like Serum is a famous one. Oh, why did that just happen? I put the Serum effects in. Oh, what's going on? It probably wants me to. It's probably saying, do you own this? Oh, I own it. Hold on, but I own it through. Yes. Okay, get out of here. I own it through Splice, so I gotta run Splice. I don't have Splice that starts up when I first start my machine, but there's a way to do this. Tools or library. I don't know. Splice. Yes. What? Okay. So for example, in here, let's see if Serum will start up or not without having to put that code in. Oh, it's gonna make me do the code. I have the code. I don't know. I'll have to deal with that later on. I've got the code. It's in my Splice account. I don't know why this is. Oh, maybe I've never haven't used it on this computer yet. You can see how much I use this. I used to use it a lot more. I prefer other ones now. But so let's do a way to cancel that. No. Okay. Nah, I wish you could see that because it's a cool synth. Other synthesizers. Where is my? What's the name of the, oh man. Well, Arturia has a bunch of stuff in here. The Arturia stuff's really cool. So for example, you got an ART 2600. This is all analog models. So this is modeling old synthesizers. And what I really recommend that you do with Arturia stuff a lot is just go through the presets. So you click on this little library thing here and you can go through the presets. You got different types of presets. You got different styles of stuff. You got different banks, all that stuff in there. So this only has, right now it's only got 604 results in here. I think there might be more, I'm not sure. But in here, you can click on these and you can, and you can click on these different presets and you can actually see how this stuff works. You're definitely not going to understand like this one here. We got to talk about the modular synthesis stuff before because it's like a semi-modular synth. But it's a very famous synthesizer, actually, the ARP 2600. Other ones I've got in here that are good synths to look at would be the Mini Moog, the Mini V3. This looks like a Model D. And again, we can click on here and get like bass sounds. And here you can go in here, and this one here is a basic. This is like what everything is based off of, really, is the oscillator. You got your oscillators here, you got a mixer here, and you got your filter over here. That's really basically it with it. You've got a loudness contour. This is your loudness contour, and this is your filter contour here, which is another name for envelope. And then you have an LFO, but the LFO is your oscillator 3. So if you're using oscillator 3 for sound, it's not going to also work as an LFO. So that's that one there. We're going to talk about this modular tomorrow. We're going to come in and talk about the modular tomorrow. The Prophet is another synth that's really awesome. Let's get a bass sound. Put that octave back up again. We got a filter here. And you can get some really tough sounds out of this thing. Really neat. Some neat stuff in here. Now this one here, I don't know how you get the the destination. Okay, it's a filter. Here's the destination. So if I wanted to, I can take this and let's see. This will work. Yeah. Not really sure how to get this to connect to the filter. I don't really program this one very much, but you know, you can do some really cool stuff with it. It's not as complex as like Pigments or Massive or something like that, but it's got a really good sound. Again, it's gonna sound, if you played like a real Prophet, it's gonna sound, you're just gonna feel it sounds better, beefier. It's easier to get a big fat sound out of it than on here, but you can like throw enough effects at it to really get sound, and it's getting pretty close. It's close enough. A Prophet, a real Prophet, like if you were to buy a modern Prophet, they cost, you know, several $1,000s. You can get the kind of the ripoff from Behringer for a few $100s, which is it's still good. It's not the real thing, but it's still good. Here's an SEM. This is like an Oberheim. Oh no, not this one. Sorry. Do I have the Oberheim one? I feel like I do, but maybe not. Well, here's another. This is an interesting synth. Get a bass. Put that octave back down. And you got different things in here. You got frequencies right here. Here's our filter. Let's get some modulation on it. So you got some stuff in here you can play with, and again, it's a different sound. So it's a different, even though it's like all basically the same. Sorry, you got the VCO1, VCO2, the filter. You got envelope 1, envelope 2 over here. You got an LFO right over here, LFO2, and your sub oscillator right here. You got some different stuff in here, so you can do some really cool things with this. But it's really more for like the sound, and than it is for like all the freaky stuff you can do with it. And Arturia always has modern stuff in here. It's always got a sequencer. It's always got a keyboard follow, some modulation, some extra modulation that you can use in here that's on top of what the original instrument had. I thought I had the Oberheim one, but I don't think, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I looked and I was like, I don't need that. I used to have, I actually owned the Oberheim OB6. No, this is like a Casio. Yeah, here's that classic kind of 80s, 90s dance sound, like kind of organy type of sound. Anyway, I'm gonna stop there with these. You can see like the Arturia, their whole thing is really cool. And if you go to Splice, actually you can rent the V8 V-Synth collection, which is all the stuff I just showed you plus more stuff, for $25 a month until it's paid off. I think the whole thing is like $500 or something like that. I'm not sure, but you can rent the whole thing on Splice for $25 a month, which is nice because if you decide that you don't want it, you don't need it anymore. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. Splice is really cool. I highly recommend it. I will get my serum up to date and I can show you all that another time. But with that, I think let's go ahead and just stop there for the day. For those of you who are joining, thanks for joining. For those of you in my class, let's go ahead and move over to Zoom. Let's do a 10-minute 10 minutes here. So at 12:25, we'll be over in Zoom, and we'll talk about this stuff more over there. All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much for joining. I will see you tomorrow or in my Zoom.